Chapter 7 The Living Soul. Begin all acts and thinking by using El Kalum the All. Tablet 22. El Kalag the Creator. 19 times 10 equals 190. Lo, if someone were to ask why, Yahuwah El Elo, he who is the source, the creator is one, he or she might answer that if there were creators, Allahum or Allahumma, for this incident on earth, one could not always design his creation like the other, neither would they go by the same principles. So we have a creator from many creators, 24 in the Garden of Eden, 12 agreeable, 12 disagreeable, give you will. El Elo from the Allahum. In order for one to preside over it, they would be necessary for the other to perish in this state, or step down to his or her leadership, making him a supreme. Al-Malik the king, or Al-Malik El-Mulki, the king of kings, the angel over all angels, he who is appointed over the 7 archangel beings, the Al-Malaikat, or Malakut. He El Elo is a being as Anu. He is Allahu Al-Azim to the Muslims, Anu the supreme being. The will of one or the other must manifest the wishes of both, or of neither one would be possible, and this would be a sign of frustration. And obviously, he or she who is responsible for the intricate creation of all things of this cycle, of refilling and replenishing the earth, is beyond frustration, and alone in his power, as Yahuwah or Yahweh, one of the Yahwehans in Allahum. Only the All is absolute, and all of the creators are in the All. Your Anu is Rab, Jesus, Horus, Tammuz, Yahweh, Jehovah, God, Dios, Buddha, Confucius, Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, Theos, Baal, Adonai, Om, Osiris, and all the others are in the All. As it stands, the universe is a very measured place, where everything fits within its particular pattern, and in the design of all things is an obvious unity. That could not be possible if more than one creator took responsibility for all creation. Each creator is assigned by the All to be the one creator, or creators with one head, as the angels with one deity above them all, for there is life beyond the earth, and new forms being discovered every day. So you, Muhammad, say in the 2nd chapter of El's Quran, originally chapter 87, the 163rd verse, and your source is one source, and no source would exist if he who the creative force of will didn't create him. Who is the yielder, the merciful? Don't make for him any partners. You say you shall have no other gods before me. El Torah to Moshe, also called Moses, Exodus 20 verse 3. You are to have no other Elohim except me. I am a jealous God. El's Torah to Moshe, also called Moses, Exodus 34 verse 14. For you will prostrate to no other El, for Yahuwah, who is jealous, for his name is Jealous El. That means there is more than one, and you're not to use but one. If you are a Muslim, you use Anu or Rab. If you are a Hebrew or Israelite or Jew, you use Yahweh or Allahum or Adonai or Hashem. And if you are a Buddhist, you use Buddha, but you're one deity, yet all are in the All regions and their one God, each are in the All. Therefore, all sincere spiritual and righteous people know with strong conviction that the Creator is power and has no associates in that power. So he is called the most powerful, the most merciful, the most gracious. To be the most of anything means their Anu is Akbar, or as they say, the greatest. He is greater than others like himself. Everything inside of the All is a servant, has no equal, no consorts, and no partners, because all is in the All. You can't take from it, and you can't add to it. The All has neither beginning nor end. The All is. The All has always existed and will exist, because the All is outside of existence and exists in the All. The All is outside of time, for time exists in the All, and all did not begin, and all cannot end. Anu is the beginning, the Awul, and Anu is the ending, the Akka, the Alpha and the Omega. If you are the beginning, you have a beginning. If you are the ending, then you have an ending. The All is without beginning or ending, the originator of all things we see and don't see, the breath that sustains all creation, presence in all. El Elo Anu, the Most High, is the only reality. He too is in the All. Everything else is mere illusion. He is one, he is the one. El Ahad has been the cry of every news-bearer prophet, for the Enoshite had the tendency to stray from El Elo, the Most High's guidance, our Heavenly Father, and seek the protection of those which could neither help nor harm him. The Appointed One, who appointed the Anointed Tammuz, who is Horus and Yeshua Jesus. In the depth of ignorance and backwardness, people sought help from objects made by their own hands. Khnum, creator of the car, which yields the bar and the ark. An Enoshite wanted to reduce the creator to his or her own level, but how could an object or an Enoshite be responsible for all creation? So to assert that an Enoshite was responsible, or that the universe accidentally came into being, thrives on the absence of logic and the abundance of ignorance. The Elohim, by permission of El Elo, the Most High, the Fashioner, gave an electric charge to the protons and electrons. He designed the minute solar system of the atom, like the one in which we live, 76 trillion years ago. He gave light its speed, 186,272 feet per second, put a barrier around sound, 1100 feet per second, blessed the golden sun Ra with enough mass to create the gravitation that keeps the heavenly bodies of its solar system orbiting properly. El Elo, the Most High, is the Fashioner. There's a reason why 75% of the planet Earth and 70% of the human body consists of water. The Creator put that balance there. Can you overstand it? When the oceans of the world all come rushing towards the shore, who synchronizes it? If the world's waterways were to cease moving, how would the fish breathe? El Elo, the Fashioner, started the water moving, and it has yet to stop on its journey home. Water is always moving towards larger masses of water. I could tell you something that would be real fascinating, but it's very simple. One thing that's unique: water is unique. Let me tell you something unique about water. Water is a symbol of personification. It's in the atmosphere. You don't see its water vapor. It's going from what's considered invisible vapor to a liquid, to a solid ice, to hot ice, to a gas. Ask yourself, what makes up water? You're trying to think of an answer in order to look like you know something. You forgot. I said I wanted to tell you something. See, it's obvious. The obvious abstract. Water is a symbol of personification. It's unseen. You don't see it. Then there's vapor, steam, condensation over frozen hot ice. Where did it come from, and where is it going? The mystery of water is that it's always going home to water. Water never stays anywhere water is not. If I put it on the ground, it will evaporate or seep into the ground, seeking out or seeping. It is always going home to water. It is pumping out of a source, looking for the source of water. Look at it in a test tube. Leave it for 100 years. It will constantly be on the move, but it will eventually go home to water. The molecule turned inside out. Thus, the restless soul of a human being is free force water. Your brain, the blood, the breathing, the digestive system, the circulatory system, the respiratory system, urine, light, pulse, blood. This is the restlessness of the human being. You see, there's only one real thing in existence: change. The only thing constantly changing is water. And where is the home of water? I told you at the beginning, home is the vicious cycle. Water is pumping out of a source, looking for the source of water. You used to know these things when you had your barotheric gland. You knew these facts. This just goes to show how out of touch you all are. The barotheric gland resided inside the hippocampus area of the brain, which is a cavity of the cerebellum. The cerebellum is located at the lower part of the brain and is attached to the brainstem. The barotheric gland has a connection with the appendix and the tonsils. The hippocampus is the tissue which held the barotheric gland when it was once inside Cadmon's Akar Adam, the grandfather of Enos's brain. Although conscious perception does not occur in the cerebellum, this is part of the brain that is responsible for hallucinations. Also, cerebellar reaction are unconscious, meaning you are unaware that it happened, and that's why even though the barotheric gland is missing, portions of the gland were left on the nerve endings, because total removal would have damaged the nerve from the cerebellum. You had 7 senses: see, feel, hear, taste, smell, clairvoyance, and telepathy. Humans do not have the 4 higher senses: mind perception, intuition, mental communication, telepathy, object reading, psychometry, and clear sight, to see in other dimensions, clairvoyance. But with the removal of your barotheric gland, you lost access to the Elohim. Then you became Enoshite. An Enoshite, a human being, is a forgetful being, which is what happened when the barotheric gland was removed. You began to forget your power. We will still have to show you how to use it, but we have to control it. You have to prove your sincerity before it is returned to you, otherwise you may misuse it. The barotheric gland will be reinserted into the persons worthy of returning home when the Elohim come for them. August the 12th, 2003 to June the 26th, 2030 and May 5th, 2000 AD we had the realignment. When this gland is reinserted, it will not be in the hippocampus part of the brain this time, but in the lower chin, referred to as the submental area, meaning the sub or lower, and mental, that which reacts with the mind. Remember Enoshite, El Elo is himself. If he wills, he can destroy this entire galaxy in a moment, and if he wills, he can recreate it in an instant. Nothing is too difficult for him, for this has already happened. An individual should observe and stand awed by the many wonders that El Elo has fashioned, and because the Elohim was procreated, he or she has to acknowledge their Elohim's greatness. An Enoshite has to submit to the supremacy of the ones who procreated them. Final analysis. Sir Isaac Newton, the British scientist who once had a skillful mechanic, who made him a miniature replica of this solar system, with balls representing the planets, geared together by cogs and belts so they would move in harmony when cranked. Later, Newton was visited by a scientist friend who did not believe in the all. Their conversation is related in the Minnesota technology. One day, as Newton sat reading in his study, with his mechanism on a large table near him, his infidel friend stepped in. Scientist that he was, he recognized at a glance what was before him. Stepping up to it, he slowly turned the crank. With undisguised admiration, he watched the heavenly bodies all move in their relative speed in their orbit. Standing off a few feet, he exclaimed, "My, what an exquisite thing this is. Who made it?" Without looking up from his book, Newton answered, "Nobody." Quickly turning to Newton, the infidel said, "Evidently you did not understand my question. I asked who made this." Looking now, Newton solemnly answered that nobody made it, but that the aggregation of matter so admired had just happened to assume the form that it was in. But the astonished infidel replied with some heat, "You must think I'm a fool. Of course somebody made it, and he or she is a genius, and I'd like to know who he or she is." Laying his book aside, Newton arose and laid his hand on his friend's shoulder. "This thing is but a weak imitation of a much grander system whose laws you know, and I am not able to convince you that this mere toy is without a designer and maker, yet you profess to believe that the original from which this design is taken has come into being without either designer or maker. Now tell me, by what sort of reasoning do you reach such an incongruous conclusion?" Echo the word of all the newsbearers, wise men, astronomers, sages and saints. Nothing would exist except by way of the all. Tablet 23. Freedom, Reality, Truth. 19 times 5 equals 95. Lo. In their subtle or pure form, the 5 basic elements combine in definite proportions to form gross elements. The existence of Tiamat or Ki, the planet which ye call Earth, depends upon these gross elements. While this view may not seem to correspond exactly with modern science, by following the essence of the thought behind it, one gains insight into the intricate relationship between matter, the physical plane, and the spirit, the spiritual plane. According to the doctrine of quintuplication, each gross element is made up of 1/2 of its corresponding pure element, and 1/8 of each of the other 4 subtle elements, the plane of force in manifestation at this level. An example of this can be seen clearly in the chart for gross Earth, in which the Earth is composed of subtle earth, and 1/8 each is of subtle ether, subtle air, subtle water and subtle fire. It can be seen that each element when quintuplicated is not pure, but contains a portion of each of the other elements. Quintuplicated, as defined by the American Heritage Dictionary, means multiplied by 5, fivefold, being the 5th of a set of 5 identical copies. Quintuplicate, one of a set of 5 identical things, a set of 5 copies, from Latin quintus, 5th. Each quintuplicated element produces a special effect according to its predominance. Each contains qualities of the others and has a particular function in nature and an Enoshite. Further, each of these elements have 5 properties. These properties are based upon the interaction of subtle elements within the gross elements, and there is a total of 25 in number. In order to better understand this, let us examine the properties associated with quintuplicated ether. The 5 properties of ether are grief, desire, anger, delusion and fear, which are all generated in the ether, which belongs to the space of the heart. Remember, ether is 9 to the 9th power of 9, containing all, both agreeable and disagreeable, good and evil. Grief is the chief part of the ether, and so is happiness, for which grieving, the body feels like an empty space. Desire is fleeting like the wind, therefore it belongs to that part of the air found in ether. When anger arises, the body becomes hot. Anger belongs to that part of the fire found in the quintuplicated ether. Delusions is as pervasive as water, and it belongs to that portion of water found in ether. Finally, when we are frozen with fear, the body becomes inanimate and statue-like. Thus, fear belongs to the earth principle. The remaining 20 properties can be overstood in a similar manner. Although the emotions are actually attributes of the spiritual body, they are treated as if they belong to the physical body, for this is where their influences are directly perceivable. Because the emotions belong to the ether portion of the quintuplicated elements, they cannot be the self, which breeds selfishness. They are negated, and identification with them is not possible. Say, I am not these emotions, I am not this body, I am not these actions, I am above, observing, controlling and witnessing. Abandon the idea of I-ness and my-ness and the identity with the imperishable atom, which is entirely different from the 5 elements, which is the knower, seer, Ra, and the witness of all these products. The physical body is reduced to nothing, and it is analyzed, and all the temporary qualities are removed. It is merely a product of the 5 elements, and there are 25 combinations. Modern scientists and doctors only understand the gross elements of the body. The 5 elements and 25 properties are mere limiting adjuncts. Ka and Ba produces Ark. When the body is stripped of them, Amun, that which remains is you, or the Aten, self. One must learn not to identify with these quintuplicated elements that make up the 5 sheaths. The body is a fictitious play of illusion and ignorance. Attachment to it is bondage. Accepting the principle of see, hear, taste, smell and feel is illusion. There is more to it than that. You must overcome these 3 laws of confinement to the spell of ignorance, persons, places and things. These 3 bind your inner self to the outer world, the world that your bigger body called ecology. The surrounding binds the deity you with what you think you want and need, when all you need to know is you don't need things to be happy. By negating the idea of possessiveness and attachment to its illusory qualities, one can achieve emancipation, freedom. Ignorance is responsible for all misunderstanding and dissension. Only true spiritual aspirants can transcend it by long, hard discipline and by practice. Because of ignorance, the common Enoshite could not overstand. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John 8:32. When you hear the statement, I and my Father are one, it meant by eliminating the body, name, and external qualifications, we would eventually merge with the source from which we came, the all. For if you look at what's called your 5 senses, which are see, hear, taste, smell, and feel, you would eliminate most by a good look at them. To taste things must touch your taste buds. To smell things must touch your olfactory nerve in your upper passage of your nose. To see light must touch the optic nerve. To hear sound waves must touch the auditory nerve. To feel is to touch the nerve fibers, which carry them as impulses to your spinal cord, then to your brain. So you see here, 5 become 1. You can become one thing. Places are things, and things exist, and existence must be felt. It all is an illusion. The 7th plane is the doorway to the all, the highest plane. Many assume that these words applied only to Yeshua Jesus and not themselves. Very few understood his meaning. Tablet 24. That thou art. 19 times 4 equals 76. Lo, O ye Hamim, blessed children of the Elohim, don't thou knowest that a word and its meaning are linked by a thought wave? When the word fire is pronounced, the corresponding mind wave is energized, and there is visualization of the same concept. The reverse also takes place. When one sees a fire, the mental image gives rise to the corresponding verbal utterance, fire. This relationship between word and meaning can be simple or complex. It is simple when it generates the word's primary meaning, the sun is hot. If a child is asked to draw a leaf, he or she copies it from nature, but an artist will draw it indirectly. There are indirect relationships between words and meanings. In the statement, "It is hot today," implies the meaning that the sun is hot. Sometimes, the direct meaning of a word is dispensed with, and only the implied meaning is taken into account. The statement, "The house is on the river," does not mean that there is a house on the surface of the river, but on the bank of the river. The direct meaning of a flowing river is discarded, and the implied meaning "on the bank" is substituted. Although the river and its bank are quite different things, one being water and the other being planet Earth, there is a spatial proximity which creates a relationship. The implied meaning is based on the direct meaning, which is then discarded. Sometimes, both the direct and implied meaning is operative. Imagine if an Enoshite is at a horse show and asked, "Which horse is jumping?" He or she might receive the reply, "The white one is jumping." A color cannot jump. However, in this case, the direct meaning white refers to the implied meaning horse, both of which are relevant to the sentence. The whole is understood to mean the white horse is jumping. Sometimes a portion of the direct meaning is retained and a portion is then discarded. Assuming 10 years ago a certain singer, Billy Paul, lived in Philadelphia and was last seen by a friend at Radio City Music Hall. Now imagine that the same friend sees him 10 years later as a wino in Atlanta, Georgia. He says, "This is that same Billy Paul." There is a certain discrepancy in this statement, but the word "this" refers to the singer Billy Paul as he was known before. It is associated with the idea of a successful professional person dressed in a suit and separated in time and space by 10 years and 1,000 miles. Certain elements are contradictory and they must be eliminated. A successful singer is not an unemployed wino. Atlanta, Georgia is not Philadelphia, and the streets of Atlanta, Georgia are not the Radio City Music Hall, which is in New York City. Also, the period of 10 years cannot be equated with the time at which the statement was made. In the statement, "This is that same Billy Paul," only a portion of the direct meaning of this and that is retained. The contradictory factors of time, space and external appearance are eliminated. While Billy Paul himself, the person, remains, it is only the idea of a Mr. Billy Paul, free of impermanent qualities, which is non-contradictory. Only after the mind has gone through this complicated process, which it does in a flash, can this Billy Paul be identified with that Billy Paul. After this Billy Paul identifies with that Billy Paul, after the opposing associations of name and form have been set aside, this is what remains. Billy Paul the person is common to both, and it stands as the implied meaning. That thou art can be overstood only in the light of this kind of reasoning. That thou art does not refer to the direct meaning of the body, name, form, clothes, location, status, time and place are eliminated. Note, even benevolence, agreeableness, or goodness is binding. Chains may be made of gold or iron, nonetheless they are chains. Most people misunderstood the body to their self. They cannot understand that thou art, because they lack the patience to consider deeply the significance of the words. Words are double-edged weapons. If misunderstood, they will be detrimental to one's progress. Properly understood, they can carry one across the depths of ignorance. The significance of that thou art can only be grasped after a long, detailed and careful consideration. Then, it will be apparent that an Enoshite was made in the Creator's image. It does not merely mean that El Elo the Most High resembles a human being, for he also created the animal, birds, fish, and in whose image are they? Being man was the only thing created that was not called good. And Elohim saw that the light, day, night, sea, animal are all good, but not man. Why? If he is in the Elohim's image and likeness, why is it not said of his creation, and the Elohim saw that it was good? Because it was not created good, you must become good. But also, one must look into an Enoshite and realize the Creator's nature is enshrined therein. The body is a temple, the head is the dome, the heart is the altar, the emotions are the religion, the soul is the preacher of the word of the Most High. You should be the word of truth, an abode of health and happiness. Tablet 25, Love. 19 times 2 equals 38. Lo, My child, true religion consists of more than ritualistic observances, baths and pilgrimage, but in loving, cosmic love, all-embracing and all-inclusive. In the presence of pure love, all distinctions and differences, as well as all hatred, racism, jealousy, egoism, are dispelled just as dirtiness is dispelled by cleanness. There is no knowledge higher than love. There is no treasure higher than love, because love is truth. Love is El Elo, the Most High. One must strive to convert one's emotion into unconditional love for El Elo, the Most High, which is neither binding nor selfish. The emotions, when channeled properly, can be used to attain freedom. One should transmute the lower emotions into unconditional emotions. Emotions are weakness, and they must not be equated with divine love, which manifests as peace and joy. The lower emotions are not suppressed, however, but they are utilized and sublimated. Without emotions there is no love, and without love one cannot approach that infinite love that is. A child of the Elohim recognizes that both love and hate are two of the most powerful driving forces in life, and that both emotions are healthy and essential to life, and to possess only one, love or hate, and to be deprived of the other is to be crippled as a bird with only one wing. But to hate another, Enoshite, is to hate yourself, and that too is fair. But there are times when you hate what you have done, or done things you hate to do. A child of the Elohim realizes that both love and hate, in order to be constructive, they must be directed into the proper channels. To do otherwise is destructive and suicidal. I love peace, I hate war. I love happiness, I hate sadness. I love those who hate me. A child of the Elohim, therefore, makes a careful distinction between his and her loved ones and his or her enemies. Through the higher emotions, the devotee reaches out to the divine. With purification and a receptive heart, he receives a continual flow of divine love. The barrier between the individual soul and the supreme soul is the ego, and that is the ever-present enemy. It manifests as a feeling of separation. Through purification, one does away with this feeling of separation, for in the ecstasy of pure love and devotion, the consciousness of the individual self is lost.